races of hers, but I think she looks like she's getting over the track really well here. They obviously did a great job preparing it. Like you said, we got over 3 inches of rain in the Louisville area.
She had some trouble in the stretch of the Spinster when she wound up second. I think with a different type of a trip, it would have been a lot closer, and we might have even seen a little bit different outcome for Champagne Problems, who seems like she might be getting good at just the right time. And I love how balanced she is over the track.
Yeah, that's what I was going to allude to, is just how nicely she's getting over it. And like I said, they took good care of it. It's not a sea of slop out there like you would expect from the amount of weather that we got, but she's covering the ground really nicely here. And I just like how she's paying attention and going about her job.
Champagne Problems from the rail in the Breeders' Cup Distaff at 1 1/8 Longines Breeders' Cup. Distaff has a purse of $2 million, and we know how much Calvin Burrell, who rides her, loves the rail. Here's a look at Miss Sunset getting ready for the filly and mare sprint. Another filly that I've been trying to watch how she adjusts as she's been here at Churchill, because I'm not so sure that she was quite as settled and comfortable as some of the others were when they first shipped in. She has the bell boots on today, so I don't know that she's going to do too much on this particular racetrack. I imagine the goal is just to keep her kind of collected and happy.
And she is kind of a high-strung type filly, knowing her from being at home, and you can see that here displayed for you, where she doesn't even want to just go about a regular trot. She's got to move all over and whatnot. She does look a little leaner than the last time I saw her, but she doesn't look tucked up and scared. She just looks like she's been racing, really well lately.
Sunset for the filly and mare sprint, and getting an opportunity to kind of catch her breath as she stands there and then gets ready to maybe perhaps do a little bit more, or maybe get off the racetrack, depending on when we've seen her.
I don't know who needs the breath, her or the guy that's on her right now.
Now you can see she doesn't really want to stand up. She's not crazy about the standing still in one place. And to be fair, horses are free-roaming creatures, so that takes a lot of discipline and training for them. But that is why a lot of trainers opt to stand their horses even for long periods of time. You see Bill Mott's horses will sometimes stand all day, it seems like. We like to utilize standing as well. I think it's a great way to teach a horse patience and just, have them collect themselves and their thoughts, which gets them moving in the right direction that you want. As she heads off the track, we head to the backstretch. She's probably not too far from where Gabby Gaudet is standing by. And as I say good morning to Gabby, I have to give you the prize, Gabby. You are the lone member of the Breakfast at Breeders' Cup team who has made the distance. Congratulations. You are truly a championship performer.
Thank you, Kaiten. It's been an absolute pleasure. And to be fair, I'm not talking as much as you and Joe every single morning, but it's been a blast here to be at the Lucas Gap and just see these horses develop day in and day out as we prepare for the Breeders' Cup weekend. And you can kind of see behind me, it is a break right now, but the stand at the Lucas Gap is getting more populated as the rain comes down. So something to take note of. But news at the top of the show, guys, the weather. Everybody seems to be talking about it. We had some rain yesterday throughout the afternoon. The card yesterday at Churchill Downs, the races were taken off the turf and the main track was sealed throughout the afternoon. With that overnight rain, we saw early this morning they continued to seal the track as well. So we see a sealed surface this morning just so we don't have that moisture kind of get into the main track. So as of now, turf training is still on, and that will resume at 9:45 later this morning. But one thing that will change, they're going to be pushing the dogs out, or the cones, so to speak, a little bit farther past the crown of the turf course, just to really preserve those inside lanes. And do take note, the turf for racing later today, turf is off. So they really want to preserve the turf for the next couple of days. Still, we're not devoid of action, as you guys were mentioning. We saw a whole bunch of Breeders' Cup horses take to the track just before the break, and we still will see horses train at their specific time slot from 7:30 to 7:45 just after the break in a few minutes. Also wanted to mention the Aidan O'Brien horses. Of course, they shipped in on Monday. They had to go through the normal protocol of the quarantine. That does take about 42 hours there. And we saw something unusual happening in the barn of Aidan O'Brien. He almost turned the shed row into his very own yard. We saw about 15 or 16 horses tack walk and tack jog within the shed row the past couple of days, but today they will make their first day onto the track. All 15 are scheduled to train on the dirt. They will be heading out at 8 a.m. today. So they're all going out at the same time. So we might see a similar thing as what we saw in the shed row. Them just kind of go around the track in the Imperial March line, as Fanny and I like to call it, Caton.
I like that. What a sight it is to see, whether it's back at the barn with all the Euros training or out on the racetrack, all part of the pageantry and the excitement surrounding Breeders' Cup as we welcome one last time Brandon Staubel to the set. But you'll be joining us for the Players' Show, so none of us are getting too far away from this desk. But, Brandon, first, before we talk about specific horses, tell us about the racetrack, what you saw from your perspective as to how it was maintained, manicured, and what it's like this morning.
Yeah, very sloppy, sealed, and if you saw some picture, I saw a nice picture on social media yesterday. Basically, half of the turf course was underwater, so that's something to think about too. Players going forward with the turf course, maybe the outside's going to play a little better, but yeah, very sloppy today. I wouldn't assume anybody's really going to do much of anything. Even the normal horses, your maidens, your claimers, just here in Kentucky, when it rains like this, they don't do a lot.
And actually, a lot of the preparation's already done with. So right now, all you want to do is try to figure out a way to keep your horse from getting too excited and too much pent-up energy, right?
Yeah, and if they could, they'd bubble wrap the horses right now because, especially with the slop, I mean, they just don't want to take any chances. I wouldn't even be surprised if some just walk shed row today, but maybe a little light jog, nothing serious today.
Let's take a look at a few horses you've earmarked to go back and look at. Among them, La Pelosa out yesterday for the Juvenile Fillies turf. I'm interested to hear both of you comment on La Pelosa because I have made her my top selection in the Juvenile Fillies turf, and a lot of it was based on what I saw.
I completely agree. That's why I picked this video out. There was a trio that worked. It was she was in the middle of the trio, and she was actually, of the three, the one that caught the eye the most for me. I just love the way she accelerated down the lane. She has maybe just a tad more of a higher knee action than a couple of the other ones that breezed, but was really happy with the way she extended, and he barely touched her. And, man, the acceleration down the lane, I clocked the final quarter, or the quarter blowout for all three of these horses. She had the fastest one in 22-2.
I loved watching her yesterday get over the grass like this. I thought she just got over it really, really well.
And do either of you feel that the way she was handling it, granted it wasn't anywhere near as much given it as we have now or what we're going to see on race day probably, but the fact that she doesn't seem to be cutting into it quite as much as some of the other horses we'd see, I think bodes well, right?
Yeah, I think skipping over the surface is what I like to see. And you can see she flipped back and forth leads there, but really accelerated late. I just love the way she was reaching out and was just doing it easy. You can see she's ultra fit. And then, like we've talked about, like Michelle's talked about, the quick grab after the wire. Just not let him do too much. But like I said, out of the three that breezed in that trio, I thought that one caught the eye the most.
Well, one horse that everybody was talking about and was talking about before she ever hit the racetrack is Enable. Two-time Arc de Triomphe winner was on the track yesterday, on the course, in fact, with Frankie Dettori, I believe, on board. And what was most remarkable, Brandon, about this, you talk about a horse who floats over the ground, who doesn't turn up a blade of grass, and that seems to be her.
Yeah, so I was in the stands pretty much ahead, right on straight view with Enable, and the reason I picked this video is because the late, great John Asher talked about when he was sitting with Carl Nafsker, and they were talking about American Pharoah, that the ground just seemed to move. It wasn't like the horse was moving. It was almost like the ground was moving beneath the horse. I got a really eerie feeling in the stands. It's like I've seen this before. I've seen a horse move like this, and this horse moves kind of similar to American Pharoah, where the ground just kind of moves beneath her. You can see those like long cannon bones like American Pharoah had, those ears up. I mean, it was just a really eerie feeling in the stands. Like, I've seen this before, and American Pharoah was based here during his Triple Crown run. So I just picked this out because you just don't see horses move like this.
I thought she just looked so professional yesterday. It was my first time to get a glimpse of her, and she came out like, I know everyone wants to see me, and just went out about her business. And like he said, it's poetry to watch her. She's just so smooth doing everything. I loved the fact that she just had her ears up, so she was very interested, but every once in a while she'd be like, am I good, Frankie? Okay, let's keep going.
Kind of goosebumps there. And I loved how you saw, I mean, there seems to be great communication between Frankie and her. He kind of nudges her with his hands, and I think he's probably talking to her out on the course as well. Yeah. Really a sight to see. Enable, tuning up for the Breeders' Cup Turf and likely to be one of the favorites on the card, if not one of the heavier favorites, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to make a decision there. I heard some horse players say yesterday they may just skip the race altogether. I mean, I feel like if you like Enable and you think she can't be beaten, I mean, that's a great single to have going forward because we've seen these multi-race payouts pay great, even with a horse like Enable.
Well, the fun thing is the head-to-head wagers pits Enable versus the rest of the field. That is a
That's a pretty crazy
head-to-head wager.
$10 minimum on those head-to-heads with just a 10% takeout. So that's going to be an exciting aspect that's new to the Breeders' Cup this year. Last horse, Brandon, Expert Eye, mile contender. Why did you choose this one?
Yeah, kind of a sneaky move, and we'll see if we have the point here. Frankie, I don't want to get him in trouble or anything, but he actually, before this, he actually cut inside the dogs, and which you're not really supposed to do, but this horse breezed 48-1 on my watch with a nice final quarter here under a little bit of ask, just like the way this horse did and was reaching out well, and that you can see the ears flopping down the lane. He's asking, but the horse is still kind of giving a response there. I like to see that. You can see the good push from behind in there. I thought it was interesting that they did such a serious move so close to the race, but I think that's just them, and they have a lot of confidence in their horse. But I thought it was really interesting that I can't remember who the galloper was, but somebody was galloping outside the dogs when Frankie hit the quarter pole, so he went inside the dogs, which I thought was a smart move because you don't want to take any chances, either being floated wide or something happened. So kind of a smart move from a veteran rider, and I hope I didn't get him in trouble there.
The Macam Bullet. I think it was well publicized, and I think they cut Frankie a little bit of slack once in a while.
It's Frankie Dettori. I don't know what you're going to say to him. You can't come back to the turf course.
Is again Expert Eye, one of the mile contenders, and Brandon Stubble, as always, thank you so much for your contributions and your insight here, and we look forward to hearing more as we get to the Players Show and over the next few days. I know you've done double duty as well, joining Joe in the afternoon at Churchill.
Yeah, it's exciting to have it here at my home track and be part of this team. It's a great team in here, and I did want to mention too that if you're interested in any type of workout reports or AM observations, I've got a link on Twitter, bstobbs22. You can just click on that link, and all the information that we've seen really the past month or so. I've been out here for a long time. So
outstanding. Yeah. Thank you so much. And we will be talking to Brandon a lot throughout the course of this weekend. We're going to talk about juvenile fillies as we let Brandon get back up to the stand. In the juvenile filly field, you see the favorites, I should say, on the outside at 2-1 in the 10-horse field is Bella Fina. There are a number of fillies who have proven ability, but one in particular, Sipican Harbor, is trying a distance of ground for the first time, and we did have opportunity to check in with her trainer, Gary Contessa, a top trainer in New York, about the issue of distance.
Working this filly, she wants to go all day. She goes 5/8, takes a deep breath and gallops out another 5/8. The further she goes, the better she gets, and she has lung capacity like I've never seen before. I mean, I've never seen her get tired. She barely drinks a little bit of water after a workout. She's never tired looking, always up and, very happy filly. So the distance should be no problem at all. I mean, her works are phenomenal, and her gallop outs are equally phenomenal. She's a 2-year-old with the brain of a 5-year-old, and she takes her race with her. He doesn't have to do anything. It looks like there's ample speed in here. Just let her fall in, and when you ask her, make sure you have somewhere to go.
She's by Kentucky Derby winner Orb and Michelle out of a deputy minister mare. Based on what I've seen from her running style, though she's versatile, I think she should be able to get the distance without a problem.
I think the distance, like you say, should be fine. I actually love that pedigree, too. If we do end up with some moisture in the track, I don't think that is going to be a problem for her. And what I really like to see is, because last time out in the spinaway, she got taken off the game that we had seen her do before, to me that proves that she can overcome adversity. Not every 2-year-old is capable of doing something fresh and something new. So I love to see that progression in her.
From the girls to the boys, the babies, and, of course, a double linking the Breeders' Cup juvenile runners, the 2-year-old Future Stars, featured on Future Stars Friday, first day of Breeders' Cup, with the Classic on Saturday. And I think that's a really fun way of linking the two races. Again, that new head-to-head wager, or in this case, the daily double wager, is one of the many unique new offerings on the wagering platform here for Breeders' Cup weekend, but a horse that I am really eager to continue looking at over the next few days, has the pedigree, has the connections, and that's Code of Honor for Shug McGahee. He was second to Complexity in his most recent start, but many are saying that perhaps he can turn the tables in here. Let's check in with Shug.
We've got the 11 posts, so I think it's going to kind of be up to him a little bit to see it. You know, I mean, he stumbled really bad leaving the gate in the Champagne, so that took position out of the question. But I think if he'd have broke good, he'd have probably been laying right on Complexity when nobody sort of went with him. And you know, I think there'll be some horses will be forwardly placed, but if he breaks good, I think he'll be forwardly placed too. But he can sort of, from out where he is, you know, try to save some ground and judge what's going on and take it from there. And that's one of the things that, you know, Johnny's so good at is, you know, evaluating what's going on during the race. And if something doesn't go exactly right, he's not going to hit the panic button and have him, you know, the biggest thing with the jock is just get them in a position to have a chance to win when the running starts.
Chick, what's it like for you? You're born in Lexington. Kentucky's home for you. What's it like to be here for Breeders' Cup?
Well, I like Churchill. I like Louisville. I spent many a time in barn 43 here before I moved my operation to New York, and so there's a lot of familiarity here, and you know, it's good for me. I like it's kind of coming back home for a little while, and you know, I got a lot of fond memories here, and looking forward to Friday.
Speaking of fond memories, I'm sure 30 years ago you have some fond memories of Personal Ensign, 1988 Distaff. That's, I guess, what, 30-year anniversary?
I think it is, yeah. That's what they say. It's 30 years. That doesn't seem that long ago, but I guess it is. That's what they say. It was in 1988, so this is 18. So, well, obviously that was, you know, quite a feat. You know, it was quite a race, and, you know, we were glad we won because you went home the next day 13 for 13, and it'd been a little bit anticlimactic. If you'd have been 12 out of 13, we probably wouldn't be standing here talking about her. But you know, so that was a fun day. We had 4 or 5 horses running that day, and we were second in the Classic to Alice Sheba and second in the 2-year-old race. So that was a big day, and with her winning, you know, just topped it off.
A man who has the way with the big days, and as luck would have it, the Hall of Famer is standing by right now with Gabby Gaudette.
We were just joking here, Caton, that we just saw him yesterday, and now you're back here with us again today. I'm sorry for bringing you out in the rain today, Shook.
I'm fine. I'm fine. Yeah, there was a gap where there wasn't any rain. Now it's raining. We're
undercover at the very least. But Christina McManigal talked to you a little bit about Code of Honor and just the history of Churchill and the Breeders' Cup being at Churchill. But I wanted to go back to Saratoga because I remember talking to you on the way to the front side before this horse even ran, and he was an attractive horse, really looked precocious. But Shug, has he surprised you in how precocious he's actually been, or did you expect this?
Well, he'd been at Fair Hill and he'd worked well down there, and when we brought him up to Saratoga the first time I worked him, I guess I was a little bit surprised at how well he did and how strong he galloped out. And that's been kind of one of the things that I've liked about him is, you know, as he got stronger as he worked along, and his gallop outs have been good, and, you know, he kind of took that to the races. And then when we ran him the first time, I didn't really know what to expect, and speed-wise, and I was a little bit scared. Mark Cassie had a horse in there I'd watched run, and it run really well, and so I was a little bit scared of him, but I was pleased with the way he ran.
And how do you think he has matured or developed, if at all, since his first start, or any changes you've seen?
Well, I think he's probably a little bit more professional, but he's always been sort of professional. And, you know, I think that he's still got quite a bit of growing up physically to do, and hopefully he'll do that over the winter. But his last race in the Champagne, obviously things didn't go the way we wanted it to at the break when he stumbled so bad. But for a young horse to be able to overcome all that and come from way back and eat all that dirt in only his second start, when his first start was he was on the lead the whole way, I thought was pretty remarkable.
I mean, what was going through your mind when he did stumble? And then it almost, I actually watched the replay last night, and it was almost as if the rider kind of wanted him to settle, took him back in the back of the pack, and he had to make up so much ground. What were you thinking at that time?
Well, when he stumbled, I thought the rider was coming off, but I said something to him. He said, "Not in the grade 1, I'm not coming off." But you know, I didn't know what to expect when he was back there. I was just, you know, I was hoping he'd make a run. It was kind of going through my mind that he had, in his works, you know, gotten stronger as he went along. But I was awfully proud of him to be able to do what he did. And I think a lot of times going back, that when a horse does stumble like that, the rider sort of give them a chance to make sure they're okay, before they start letting them do anything. And, he made a big move and, was way wide the whole way, and Complexity was on an easy lead, which I didn't expect. I thought there'd be some more horses that were forwardly placed, and I think that if we had broke that day and been, that we had been laying right off of him, then what would happen from there, I don't know.
Could have turned the tables, but after the race, I know, at least from reading some quotes and articles, you were not 100% sure in pointing for the Juvenile. Obviously, it was something in the back of your mind, but what gave you the confidence to push forward with this horse?
Well, the way he came out of it, and, I talked to Mr. Farish when we had honor code, and he finished second in the Champagne. They didn't actually want to take him to, which we didn't, to California. Wanted to just stay back in running the Remsen, and that's what we did, and it worked out. And so I just sort of wanted to give it a few days and talk to him and see before I jumped out and made this big commitment that I wanted to go to the Breeders' Cup, But obviously down deep that I did want to come. I mean, I'm a big advocate of the Breeders' Cup, and, I like Churchill Downs and Louisville, and so I feel comfortable here. So, I was hoping that he would say, and we discussed it a couple times for a couple days, and, finally we both kind of said, what do we got to lose? So here we are.
If you have the horse to bring you here, why not? And Chuck, you said you're a big advocate for the Breeders' Cup, and how does it feel being back here at Churchill Downs underneath the Twin Spires for the Breeders' Cup weekend?
Well, it's exciting. This was one of the places I got started. I'm in barn 43, and that's where I was before I moved to New York, and so I got a lot of fond memories there. He's in the same stall that Orb was in when he won the Derby, so all things are good. I'm comfortable here. I'm familiar with the surroundings. I lived in Louisville for 4 years, and I loved living in Louisville, and obviously I'm partial to Churchill Downs and all that goes on, so it's fun. It's always fun coming home, and this is one of the places that I really do particularly like and enjoy being here.
It's amazing. We're actually showing the video of Code of Honor taking to the track early this morning. What did you do with him, and what did you want to see from him today, obviously with the poor conditions of the track today?
Well, I don't think that sloppy track shouldn't be a bother to him. The way, he's pretty efficient, the way he moves, and, yesterday I went out at, the 7:30 break, and I got here this morning. I said, let's go on and get this over with. And I saw a little bit of break in the rain, and so we came on. And, I just wanted to get him out here and get him around there and see how he handled the situation. And, he's walking to the track, he's looking at the lights and all that stuff. But I was pleased with what I saw and what, when he came back here. So, I think all systems are go.
All right, all systems go. Well, best of luck this weekend, Chuck, and thank you for joining us here this morning.
Well, thank you, Gabby. I appreciate it.
Caton?
Always fun to talk to Shug, and particularly at Churchill Downs with the conditions the way they are, and now hearing him say that Code of Honor is in the same stall that Orb was in for the Derby. This weather is a little reminiscent of the weather that surrounded Orb's Kentucky Derby win. Horse really looking good.
Yeah, he looked spectacular out there, and you saw Shug took him out with no accoutrement. There was no wraps on him. There was no ace bandages, no nothing, just, all natural horse out there. And I have to applaud Churchill again. You would never know the amount of weather we got watching that gallop. I mean, if you didn't look down towards the rail, you could see some of the moisture. Where he was, it was spectacular.
First thing in the morning, it is amazing to me when they first open the track and what good shape it can be despite the elements. This is a look at Some Like It Hot Brown. Some Like It Hot Brown will be running in the juvenile turf. He'll break from post position 7. That'll be the 8th race on Friday, Future Stars Friday. And he's coming off 2 tough beats, Michelle, but one of them was on a yielding turf. He did seem to handle it pretty well.
And he did. I mean, he ran second. He was only beaten 3/4. What I dislike is that he hit the front and it looked clear to me, and then he couldn't hold off anybody coming, with a late charge at him. Here he looks like he's getting over the ground well, and when you see his debut at Saratoga, it was a nightmare in the slop. Obviously, this track not sloppy, but, with that little bit of moisture, you just don't know how they're going to handle it, and he looks just fine right there. So we could just maybe be seeing a natural progression. It could also be the fact that that was a sprint race, and he has really excelled going the 2 turns.
And following in the footsteps, so to speak, of his mentor, Dwayne Lucas, who always used the white bridles. Mike Maker has the white bridles, make it a little easier for us to pick them out on the racetrack, to be sure. Although I know a number of the California trainers were really impressed with the lights. They said they thought they were sending their horses out in the dark when they went first thing in the morning, but it's not dark. It's very, very light.
It's so funny when they say, like, in our ear, oh, we're going to show you something from earlier this morning. And I'm thinking, are you sure that's this morning? It looks like the afternoon.
Like how much size some Like It Brown has. He strikes me as a horse similar to his sire, Big Brown, who has a lot of body, a lot of substance to him, but he still moves pretty nicely. You wouldn't know that he's a bigger horse by the way he moves. He's a very athletic individual.
I have to completely agree with that statement. I was just watching him come down the lane there. This is the first time that I've seen him, and he, like you say, he's got this nice long neck, but he's super balanced. He gets a hold of himself really well.
From the 2-year-olds to the dirt milers, more established form for these guys. Take a look at Trigger Warning, who was out earlier this morning, tuning up for the mile. And he's more, to me, he reminds me more of the sprint type of horse with that shoulder and those powerful hindquarters.
Yeah, he doesn't look like a two-turn type, and that's what he's been doing lately, and he has seemed to do decently well at it. You know, he's coming off that third-place finish, well beaten behind McKenzie, where he was the pace setter that day in the Pennsylvania Derby. The cutback in distance here could be interesting. He's actually never tried a flat mile. He has run a mile and 70 yards at Fairgrounds, but that was a dismal performance. So I'm hoping he's going to improve, and I think we've seen him improve just, recently for him. He seems to be coming in to his own. Not a lot to garner here from him jogging, really.
Third in his most recent start in the Pennsylvania Derby, and as we mentioned, perhaps well suited to the turn back to one turn and the mile distance. Trigger Warning has earned over $400,000 through 4 victories and 14 starts. And, yeah, this is just a little leg stretcher just to keep him happy and content. So that
and he looks happy.
And he does. Well, I'm still amazed. And when you look at even the outside of the racetrack there, you can see all the water standing, but you can also see that they are getting a really nice, good hold of it, and that it isn't as if it's sloppy, boggy. It's in pretty good shape. That's a live look at the horses collecting outside the gap, and it can get a little bit like rush hour. Not like your rush hour in California, but our rush hour here in Louisville, Kentucky. The tractors are still out there, and the horses will wait until, obviously, the tractors have cleared the track and they get the okay from the outrider to enter. So it's a good time for us to step away briefly for a short break, but we'll be right back. As you can see, breakfast at Breeders' Cup and Breeders' Cup contenders are soon hitting the track.
The stars will align on November 4th when the top buyers from around the globe gather at Basing-Tipton for the world's premier breeding stock event. One spectacular evening with a catalog featuring no less than 70 Grade A Stakes winners or producers, with nearly half of those being Grade 1s. Plus a stellar selection of Breeders' Cup winners, champions, and selected weanlings. No other sale packs as much energy and excitement into a single session. Join us for a night of stars, the November sale at Basing-Tipton. Where will you be?
And a shout out to all those who are gathered in the Fasig-Tipton Windstar Breakfast Marquee tent, keeping out of the elements and still able to
eat avocado toast.
Take in, the avocado toast and all the goodies that are out there, as well as the scenery and the sights and sounds of the Breeders' Cup contenders there. We're going to see it in the infield. This is as close as I've gotten to it this week.
We haven't been over?
I've heard I've missed out, too. The food, second to none, and, of course, a spectacular opportunity to view the workouts.
Really great view. This is the first time I can remember the Breakfast Marquee being in an infield situation, because normally it's been on the outside of the rail, and it is really cool to get to see. Obviously, no one utilizing that patio out there today, but you can see people packed in along the windows. And by the way, that right-hand corner station we're zooming in on, that's the avocado toast station.
Ah, see, that's a true California girl. You may have spent a lot of time in Kentucky, but it's the California that goes for the avocado toast.
To be fair, there is not a hot brown station. I was really disappointed. I came in, I'm like, where's the hot browns? And there wasn't a hot brown to be found.
Some like it hot. Brown could be the hunch play. As they start to take to the track, I believe those are Brad Cox horses. The distinctive blue collars are prominent on the saddles, as well as the equipment that all, I think, Assistant Georgie and the rest of the crew are wearing. Brad's sons, part of the team.
I've never met Brad Cox.
Oh, well, you'll have to get over there, but maybe you'll have a chance to interview him, too.
I would love
afterwards, as he has 4 chances in the Breeders' Cup this year. There's a look at Gunnevera, though. Florida shipper coming in for Antonio Sano for the Breeders' Cup Classic. He has made the trek to Churchill Downs before, one of a collected few, very select few, that actually competed in the Kentucky Derby and is still going strong. That was a while ago. He is not the type of horse that you make judgments on based on what you see in the morning, in my opinion. He's not that robust of a workhorse, but he is just an honest horse that lays it on the line in the afternoon.
And I have to say, from a physical standpoint, he has gotten so much better as he's gotten older. His 3 to 4 year old year was a real turning point for him. And when I was over in Dubai and he was there in Dubai, he just looked really great. He was starting to come into his own. I think this is probably the best that I've seen him look in a long time. And like you say, you can't judge him always on the way that he is on track. He has so much heart. It's just unbelievable. Looking at the Woodward where he ran, I thought, a bang-up second. I feel like if you like Yoshida, how do you not like Gunnevera? Gunnevera, if I'm going to play any kind of exotics, is absolutely on every ticket that I have because he throws down his A game every single time. You want to look at the Dubai World Cup? His foot, when he came out, I'm surprised he was, not able to walk back to the 1.5 miles to his barn. It was so bad, and he has overcome that. You can see him right here. They did a great job bringing him back from that situation. That was just an unfortunate, racing incident, and where he stepped on himself. And I love that he has gotten back into really good form. I know people kind of took some hits that they came back in that, compact allowance race. I thought that was a great confidence boost for him. I thought it was a great return race for him, and I think Gunny looks really good right here.
Second to Yoshida in the Woodward in his most recent prep. Guinevere will be in post position 4. Catholic Boy out on the track is next to take a look at. He'll be right inside of Guinevere in post position 3 for the Breeders' Cup Classic. Jonathan Thomas has done such a good job. His entire team coming together. Tracy on board. Catholic Boy we spoke to earlier in the week, and talking a lot about watching the progression, seeing him mature both mentally and physically. And what a strong, robust, big son of more than ready he is, riding that 3-race win streak. I'd moved him right up toward the top of my list as far as contenders for the Breeders' Cup Classic, and everything he's done this week seems to be pointing in a positive direction.
Well, if anyone watched our Breeders' Cup breakfast shows last year, this was the horse that was the best-looking horse, in my opinion, all week long. So I was a little disappointed he didn't end up winning the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, but I've been on his bandwagon since last year, so I am so thrilled to finally see him get, I feel like, the respect that he deserved.
Do you think that had he not gotten into a little bit of tight quarters,
yes,
the outcome would have been perhaps different? When he finished 4th to Mendelssohn in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, and that's the one thing when we look at horses and we say, well, you can summarize and say, well, he trained beautifully and he didn't win on Breeders' Cup Day, yes, but based on trip, I think he had excuses, and it sounds like you agree.
I agree, and you know what? The whole time he was training, actually, I had gone up to Jonathan. I said, I wish you had entered the Juvenile, because I think this horse just floated over the ground at Del Mar last year on the main track training. And he said, maybe down the road. And I had caught up with him right after, and he said, you know what, we're going to go towards the Remsen. So he had kind of already known that they were going to be pointing towards some dirt races, and I was so excited to see him that day and, be a clear winner. And like I said, he's just come into his own. I thought that he has showed grit. He showed determination. He has outrun his pedigree. He has outrun pretty much everything to do well. Now, this is going to be a massive, massive ask for him because this is a tough group of horses. And, it's very hard for a 3-year-old to go against older horses, but he could not look any better.
Bred by Fred Hertrick III and John Fielding. It is the Breeders' Cup, so a little shout-out to them with the son of More Than Ready out of Song of Bernadette, who looks for his 4th consecutive win. And
she's in the Phasic sale.
Certainly his biggest here, Catholic Boy. A lot of the horses that you see have connections, direct connections to the sales, to the Phasic Tipton sale in particular with the Stars. Come Out, Midnight Bisou. tuning up for the distaff. Had a little mishap, but it didn't matter. It was inconsequential, but I'm sure Ryder didn't like it. She is feeling good, though, and she managed to get him dropped. She didn't get away from the pony yesterday, but that to me is a sign of how on the muscle and ready she is, Michelle.
And we did talk to Jeff Bloom, one of her co-owners, and he said that's not her normal mental state where she's, a flighty type filly. She was just feeling really good. And like you said, Scott never let go of her, so it wasn't like she was loose running around. I'm sure that the exercise rider is going to be much more careful today and pay very close attention to what this filly's body might be doing.
Bred by Woodford Thoroughbreds and now owned by Jeff Bloom, Bloom Racing Stable at Medicat Stables and Company. Daughter of Midnight Lute will break from post position 7 in the Longines Breeders' Cup Distaff. The 9th race on Saturday's program here is Bellafina, who will race on Saturday in the Juvenile Fillies. Friday. Future Stars Friday. And she breaks from the outside. She's another that is likely to be heavily favored, I think, Michelle?
Yeah, I think that she is. She brings in back-to-back Grade 1 wins and 3 straight graded stakes, in fact, and all of those by open lengths. Of course, it's always a question on who she's beat, and those last 2 Grade 1 fields were a little more compact, and I think that you would like to see when you're talking about a horse now having to break outside in a field of 10, but you really can't knock too much from her. Here she is on the track just jogging, and you can see she's a little squirrely. That's just her. When we've seen her school also before the races, she gets a little bit hot and a little bit nervous. Although I did see her schooling 2 days ago here in the paddock, and there was probably 30 horses schooling, and she was perfect, didn't turn a hair. But lots going on this morning. As you can see, she's looking around. There's the tractors right there. There's the lights she's never seen. It's a lot to ask of this filly. So even though they like her and she is produced on the racetrack, the external circumstances are something to take note of here as well.
We're going to switch to the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf, and I believe Marley's Freedom out on the track. Or
Sprint. Filly Mare Sprint, right?
Filly and Mare Sprint. Marley's Freedom will be in post 13 and is another one that, as far as handicappers are concerned, may be a key horse on a lot of tickets.
Yeah, she just hasn't done really anything wrong recently, especially since coming into the barn of Bob Baffert, and here she is just stretching her legs. She doesn't look like she's covering the ground as well as she was yesterday, but again, different surface today. The lights are out today, and it's her, second day out on the track, which is, I think, changes horses.
Do you see a difference in her from here to California?
I actually never really saw her train too much in California. There are a lot of the horses that I'm familiar with, and her I only saw train on maybe 3 separate occasions, most of them down at Del Mar. But yeah, like here, she's not moving. She's not really extending herself like I'm used to seeing her do, but that could just be the tight hold that her rider has on her, and again, everything going on here. Physically, she looks fantastic.
This is the first I've seen her. Yeah, she carries nice weight. She's, I love to see that. She's a little bit shorter through the body, but very streamlined and extremely fit. You can see the muscle definition there through the hindquarters as well as her shoulder. And when you can see that even underneath the saddle, how fit she is and how much she uses herself, and just she's ripped.
And right there, you saw like when she was jogging, how she really propels herself and throws her legs out. That's the Marley's Freedom that I'm used to seeing. So I think maybe just a tight holder where they weren't letting her do too much on the surface is why she was a little choppy. But physically, you can't knock her at all. She has thrived under the Bob Baffert training program.
Also, her tail is tied up, and you'll see that with a lot of the horses on the track. That basically makes it a lot easier for the grooms when they come back to be able to untie. They just knotted it up so that it doesn't pick up all the dirt. And sometimes it's annoying to some of the horses, and you'll see them swishing it a little bit more because they're not used to it, and it kind of feels funny. It also sometimes can cause them to, especially when they're jogging, move just a little bit differently because their tail feels a little bit different, almost as if they've, when you've been pulled back in your hair into tight braids, a little bit too tight, and you aren't quite sure what to do with it, but it is purely cosmetic versus anything else.
When I played polo, and you have to put your tails up to play polo. If your tail fell out when they played, it was a $20 fine or a pack of beer.
Well, the worst is if part of the tail falls out of the mud knot right there, because then that part picks up the mud, and then the horse swishes it around and becomes a weapon.
I don't know what Bob Baffert that is because I couldn't see, but if it was game winner, that is a lot more energy than we saw from him yesterday.
After the warm-up yesterday and the little dip in temperatures plus the slop, you're going to see a few of these horses kicking up their heels. the noise in and of itself will keep horses getting a little excited. Blue Prize for the Distaff, a filly that I know Joe Christopher mentioned he thought might end up third choice before it's done. She's definitely going to take some support, to be sure, off of her most recent start.
Well, she deserves the support, because even though she was so quirky in the spinster that it almost cost her the race, when she finally got settled down, she was still a pretty clear winner. And I do know that Champagne Problems had a ton of issues in there, and Joe and I kind of disagreed on, you know, how much she could have won by if she had stayed straight, because I felt like then if Champagne Problems had gotten a better trip, she might have been the winner too.
One of her rivals, Monomoy Girl, galloping here as she did yesterday. She's can be a different horse in the afternoon than she looks in the morning, Michelle. Also, different horse breezing than she looks in the morning oftentimes. She was a bargain purchase. She's not the biggest horse in the world or most robust, but when she gets in groove, when she has company or when she has focus and purpose, she does look like a different horse. She moves with her head up in the air. She's not, she's not the picture of the classic racehorse on the track, but she's done almost everything right.
I don't mind the fact that she carries her head a little high, because she still travels really well. She puts her legs up underneath her, and, you know, she doesn't look awkward up front. Some horses look really unbalanced when their heads are held up high, and I feel like she still covers the ground really well. I think Liz Crow picked out a nice specimen there, and, you know, really, really kudos to her. Like you said, a not too expensive type filly that has just done nothing wrong, earning almost $2 million.
Michael Dubb and Monomoy Stables among the owners of Monomoy Girl. Brad Cox, his first grade one came through her victory in the Ashland, and she has been almost perfect, crossed the line in front in all her races this year. The one disqualification coming at the hands of Midnight Bisou, a bit of her own making, given her lack of focus through the stretch. But you can see she's a type that buddies up to her pony. She hangs out. She is just not the type that puts more into it than is necessary and has a bit of a mind of her own.
You know what's funny is she doesn't look anywhere near as impressive jogging next to Pony as she did galloping out by herself. I mean, that could have been two completely different horses right now.
And in her workouts, the same thing. You'll see when she comes off the track from her works, she'll look a totally different horse.
Really?
Oftentimes. Monomoy Girl will be on the outside, post position 11 in the Breeders' Cup Distaff at 1 1/8 miles. Channel Maker for trainer Bill Mott will be racing on the grass, but training on the dirt. And he's a horse who actually has looked good on all surfaces.
I was just going to say, he is getting over the dirt really well. What are the odds they rain the mile off?
I don't see it happening, but
he looks really good getting over the dirt right now, coming off a gate-to-wire win in the Grade 1 Turf Classic over at Belmont on soft going. He's run on pretty much every kind of footing, it looks like, as far as the grass goes. But it's just been his last 3 races this year that have really excelled to me.
Yeah, he's a hard horse for me to get a line on because he looks so good. And in many instances, I felt like he was the horse to beat, and it hasn't actually turned out that way. But he's coming into this race as you would want him to. And I know Bill Mott has been pretty happy with the way he's coming in, and also not the type that takes arbitrary shots or swinging for the fences. He has earned a spot in the Breeders' Cup, to be sure.
Well, at least with Enable in this race, I feel like a lot of pressure's off all the horses in the turf, because if Enable wins, you're like, well, it's Enable.
Oh, exactly. Exactly. Breeders' Cup Turf contender, Channel Maker. He'll be one of the contenders as far as the wagering public is concerned. For the Breeders' Cup Turf, he'll be in post position number 3 in race 10. And a horse that I don't know that we've gotten a look at before, coming from the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf. Summering for Tom Proctor.
She's skipping over this nice. She definitely hasn't seen any kind of weather like this in California. I think we've had 1 day of rain in California since last year, if I'm not mistaken. She looks really good here. She looked, she looks like a turfy type filly, and it actually looks like she has shipped over very, very well constitution-wise. She doesn't look like she's lost any weight or whatnot, and she looks very professional here. Only 3 starts under her belt, and last time out she was beaten by Laker Ball, but Laker Ball did come back to win another stake at Golden Gate last weekend. So even though she didn't get a clean trip and she got defeated last time out as the heavy favorite, she can move forward from that effort.
summering third in her most recent in the Surfer Girl going a mile. I don't know that it was a legit excuse that she would have won, but she didn't have the smoothest of trips. Just didn't get into a race flow that you would have liked to have seen for her to get her very best opportunity. But that said, again, I don't know that it would have made a difference. The horse we saw just before was not Channel Maker. It was Glorious Empire. So a correction there. So this is Glorious Empire, not Channel Maker.
Still getting over the ground really well.
Yeah, I still like him.
Everything we said is still a legitimate statement about how he covers the ground.
And another one of those horses that a lot of people have been talking about, Glorious Empire, as maybe a wild card type choice or shot in the race, wise guy horse, if you will. But I have liked what this horse has looked like, to be sure, and including today.
I think it's awesome anytime we see a horse that was a former claimer step up. You know, we talked yesterday about Mike Maker, how good he's done with horses that were former claimers, especially running in some of the grass races, and he looked good. Ooh, Roaring Lion. I hope he's going to go back to the gate because he needs it.
Well, he had to stand a long time before he got into the gate. He was reluctant. He had a mind of his own. And then when he actually got out of the gate, he did a little something, too. As a result, combination of factors, maybe he did get very warm. I think that is him a little bit, too. I think his personality is a bit like that. But I liked quite a bit how he looked in that little, once he picked it up out of the gate, he broke out of the gate running. And I thought when he did that, he moved like a different horse from what we had seen in previous days, and I thought he looked quite comfortable on the ground. And that's the big question mark with Roaring Lion for the Classic. There is no question what he has done on turf overseas. If he were running in one of the grass races, he would likely be one of the favorites. But with other worlds to conquer, the connections are sporting people who will take a shot at the Classic and want to see if he's capable. And my personal opinion is that the reason we don't see more of the Europeans winning the Classic is just because we don't see more running in it. I think if given more opportunity, we've seen some really good. I just feel they don't get a chance to show what they can do on the dirt. I don't know that this horse can win, but I think that he might be capable of handling the dirt.
Well, he does have street sense on the bottom. Kitten's Joys are really versatile. They kind of run on anything. And this horse is won on synthetic. So while some of our, previous horses that have attempted the Classic that were turf horses haven't been able to get anything close to dirt, at least he does have that situation. We're seeing him walk here behind the gate. He did this yesterday before he went in, and he was pretty good behind the gate yesterday, too. He wasn't hot until he got in and started acting up. And while he was in there for a long time, he had to be because he wasn't standing at all. But what I liked was once the header put a little bit of pressure on him, he did pay attention then. And like you said, here's the little bit of the gate run, and I thought he looked great coming out of the gate.
Now, there is the concern about kickback because it's a different animal in a race versus out by yourself. But as far as him handling the dirt, and there was a question for all of us in watching him in the days leading up to this particular thing, as to whether he was really all that comfortable over it, whether he really relished it. I thought in that little bit of time that he opened up and was galloping on that he seemed like he handled it. Inside post position, probably not ideal from a standpoint of kickback. And if it's an experiment, then this is going to be a good time to prove it. But I like the Kitten's Joys across the board. I think he has had as good a win strike with horses on the dirt as he has on the turf.
He has 14% each way.
He just hasn't had an opportunity to have that many offspring that have actually tried the dirt. So let's put it this way. At this point, unless something happens, I'm using him. I don't know that I'm using him on top, but I'm using him underneath some of my key horses.
I want to see him schooling the gate today again just to see if that was a one-off or if it's something I need to be concerned about, on race day, because he just was so naughty. And when we look at the way they're going to load on race day, they load 1 and 7, 2 and 8. So he'll be going into the gate early. And with Accelerate being on the outside, Accelerate in his last 2 races has not loaded in the gate. He flat refused last time. It was 4 or 5 people pushing him in to try to get him into the gate. So because of that, that could leave Roaring Lion standing in the gate for a really long time.
That is a concern as well for any of them, and especially with the Euros being a little bit different animals as far as the starting process is concerned. Just things to consider when you're trying to make your selections for Breeders' Cup. Havel is tuning up for the Classic. He will face Roaring Lion as well as some of the other horses, Catholic Boy that we saw earlier today, and Pavel, or Pavel, as he's been known. Pavel was the winner of the Stephen Foster here at Churchill. How much importance do you place on the fact that he was able to win over the Churchill Downs Strip?
I love when horses can go somewhere and already have a win, especially at tracks that can be deemed quirky. I wouldn't say Churchill's a quirky track, but the surface tends to play, I feel like, a little harder than some of the other surfaces, and that can really work out for a lot of horses, so I think it is definitely worth noting.
Redham Racing owns the son of Creative Cause, who is bred by the Brereton Jones and Windstar Farm in Company out of Mons Venus, who is a daughter of Maria's Mon, and 3 for 11 lifetime. I guess if there's a knock, and he sure looks good physically, he's held his weight, he's traveled the world, and he's come out of it and looks just as good, if not better, than he did going in. If there's a knock, it's that he doesn't win that much.
But Doug's never afraid to throw him in those spots, and even if he's not winning, a lot of times he is running a good race. Let's be honest. He started off okay. They got really salty on him and started just running him against older horses pretty early on, and he did finish third in the Jockey Club Gold Cup. He ran well beaten in the Breeders' Cup Classic. Then they tried him to bring him back sprinting, and then the next time out again it was older horses. So, they've done a lot of things with him that maybe some more conservative trainers wouldn't have attempted, and I think that does, affect their record when you look at a trainer like Doug who's willing to take those swings with horses.
Switch gears and take a look at one of the contenders for the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint, which will be 7 furlongs on Saturday, the first of the Breeders' Cup races. Race number 3 on the card, Kirby's Penny for Wesley Ward, has a little bit of early speed. The 5-year-old daughter of Macho Uno out of a Peace Rules mare bred by the Hidden Springs Farm, has a pretty impressive record of 7 wins from 14 starts. She was actually acquired through the claim box, and in fact changed hands a few times. Wesley Ward had her originally, lost her, and claimed her back, and now finds her in the Breeders' Cup off a third-place finish in the Gallant Bloom.
I think it's worth noting he lost her for 20 and claimed her back for 40. So that is, that's a
He liked her.
Yeah, he liked her a lot. And I like this. We saw her yesterday. She didn't look anywhere near as flashy as she does right now. She was just throwing her legs out really high and moving over the track really great, which, not that she didn't look good yesterday, but I think today she looks better, in my opinion.
The goal is that they look better and better and better and the best on Friday or Saturday, depending. Another Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint contender out there right now. And again, the track is reopened. There was a short time they had the opportunity to manicure the track, or in this case, really try to squeeze any water out of it that they possibly could. This is Highway Star. She'll be in post 10. 5-year-old daughter of Girolamo is 9 for 21 lifetime with earnings of $1.2 million. Her last was a win, but it was in restricted company. So this is a class test for her so far, though she has been successful in grade 2 company.
Yeah, she ran second in the Ruffian behind Pacific Wind, who I think is a really nice older filly. And, my one drawback for her is, again, she's not ultra consistent as far as wins go. She only had that one win this year, and it was in a, like you said, a state bred race. So I'm kind of like taking her with a grain of salt. And she looks okay out here on track. Not much to garner from her just walking off now, and she wasn't doing much on the jog.
She had a nice workout October 11th in New York before she shipped here. 20-1 on the morning line with Jose Ortiz riding for Chester and Mary Broman, who hit the jackpot last year with a big priced horse. And if Highway Star is successful, it'll be a similar case. She feels good. She's a little atypical as far as sprinters are concerned.
Does not look like a sprinter at all. She's a little bit leaner, a little bit racier looking. So, yeah, you're very right on that.
And we're going to go back to John Gosden's, a couple of John Gosden's that are out there. Legends of War for the Juvenile Turf Sprint, as well as Roaring Lion, who we saw earlier. Roaring Lion, of course, the gray. But there is Legends of War. And with the...
He's on the AE.
He gets to lead the way over Roaring Lion.
Maybe he needs it. Maybe Roaring Lion needs a buddy. I mean, yesterday when they were circling, there were 4 or 5 of them around there that they were behind the gate all together.
They like some company. They do go out in big packs. We heard Gabby talking about them, kind of almost recreating that at Aidan O'Brien's in the quarantine barn, trying to ride them all at the same time around there. And it is a different experience. It's one thing that, you marvel at the class that's inherent in these thoroughbreds, that they can come over under such different circumstances as far as the training and the routine. You put them in a barn, there's no yard, there's no turnout, they don't get to be ridden all the time the way they usually do, and yet they're so resilient and adaptable that for most of them, doesn't faze them. They come over in the afternoon, they know what they're supposed to do.
And I think part of it is, they're so conditioned to doing their job. When you come over and put them back in their routine, even if it is somewhere different, when they get the saddle on, they're like, okay, we've gone out today, I know what's going to happen, even if it is in a completely different setting and scenario. I think that is, smart on Aiden's idea to, okay, you know what, we're used to jogging, we're going to jog in the shed row, let's just do it.
Legends of War is number 16 on the also eligible list for the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. But well done, Fox. The next horse we're going to